In today's video, we're going to be covering the most powerful builds for each of the classes. So whether you're looking for something that can sip through the hardest content in the game, decimate tormented bosses, or if you just want to feel like a lean, mean killing machine, then this list will have what you're looking for. And for this video, I spoke with some of the absolute best players for their respective classes, and we'll be using footage from them in this video, and I'll leave a link down to all of their socials below so that you can check them out if you do see something that you like. And kicking things off, we have the Immortal Firebolt Sorcerer. Now, this is a build that lives up to its name in the truest sense. It literally cannot die. You need to throw any preconception you have of sorcerers being squishy out the window this season, because they really are invulnerable to damage while using this build. So the only limiting factor for this build is its DPS output, which is by no means bad. I mean, we're currently looking at clears of around tier 120 in the pit without a Holy Bolt's elixir, which is more than good enough. This is an extremely high clear. So in addition to being able to do that, of course, this is going to be a fantastic build when it comes to tormented bosses, because you can just stand basically in front of the boss, tank everything, and just hit it until it's dead, which is not a very long time. It's also a ridiculously fast spec, so the mobility on this one is pretty bonkers, allowing you to speed farm lower tier content in insane speed. So really quite a full package here. The only thing you really need to get used to is having to set up like your Talrashas properly. And just in case, for those of you who don't know, I'm referring to Talrash's iridescent loop. This is the malignant ring that drops from the Echo of Sham boss. And what this does for you is give you a really nice juicy damage boost when you use a different school of magic. So when you use Frostbolt, when you use Teleport for lightning, and then use Flame Bolt, you'll get that stacking damage buff, and you'll need to keep making sure that that is up while you're playing. Now, there's also some really other cool tech to playing Sorc this season as well. I really like it when builds are like this, where you have to pay attention to certain things and have this ability to sort of express your skill with the class. But also, if you try and move exclusively with teleports, you know, are you not actually using your feet to move, then you can also keep your inner calm buff up, which is an aspect which gives you, again, a huge boost of damage as long as you don't move. Meaning that there's like a lot to track, and it can keep the build interesting. You know, some people might not like this particular playstyle. I mean, I play Barb, right? I'm used to just holding down one button and going crazy. But for a lot of people, I think it's nice to have some stuff to actually do within the rotation to, you know, outperform other sorcerers through skill as opposed to just gear. So yeah, I mean, all in all, Firebolt, a crazy build, like literally immortal build. Now, there are variations of it. If you want to play, for example, a Frozen Orb version, you can, but they don't quite have the uptime on Flame Shield like this build does. So, you know, it's going to be harder, and it can't quite push as far, but it's by no means weak if you want to take a look into those. Now, moving on, we're going to go into the other caster in Diablo 4, which is the Necromancer. Now, man, the Necromancer is absolutely popping off. People have wanted it for a long time, and minion builds are here. They are extraordinarily strong. I've seen clears, I think, up until like the 140s with the Necromancer. Now, this is using the Holy Bolt's potion, which is a seasonal potion which ramps up the power of certain specs to levels they're not technically supposed to be at. But I mean, even without it, you're looking at a 126 clear with the Golem variation of minions, so it is by no means a slow spec in that regard at all. And besides having dope-ass minions that are just going to batter everything to death for you, Necromancer has some really, really cool tools that make it a super fun spec to play. So one thing that I'm super envious of Necromancer players is Grasping Veins. It is by far, and it's not even close, the best skill for collecting enemies in the entire game. You know, there are other things like Steel Grasp, Grasping Whirlwind, you have things like the Raiment of the Infinite for the Sorc, but this is SSSSS tier for grabbing enemies. Just everything like on screen, boom, right onto one pixel, and then you can have your minions come in and just smash them to pieces. It's extremely cool. I love this tool. I wish we had more stuff like this on other classes. Very, very jealous of this skill. Also, Blood Mist. Probably one of the best, if not like the best, defensive cooldown in the game. Makes you completely invulnerable to damage and crowd control for a period of time. So it's absolutely perfect for getting out of those spicy situations when you know, say for example, a Lilith Shadow comes in and starts to do some crazy shit while you're trying to kill the boss. And because this is a minion build, a lot of your damage, or at least some of your damage, is passive, meaning that even when you are having to dodge explosions or boss mechanics, you still have that uptime of damage on bosses, which is really, really, really nice. You don't feel super punished when actually having to do things, whereas like with other classes, when you're not hitting the boss, you're not hitting the boss. And much like the Sorc, there's actually a sort of semblance of a rotation here, which make this more engaging and, in my opinion, more fun to play. So Shadow Blight, your key passive, is going to stack up to 10 times as enemies receive shadow damage. And when it gets to 10 stacks, you'll know that there's going to be a big jump in the amount of damage that you do. So you're going to want to optimize using your cooldowns around that window. But also you are going to be using the Hellbent Commander passive, meaning that you also want to be close to your minions. So despite being a ranged spec, you actually are incentivized to get close to your minions so that they're getting this nice little damage bonus. And I say little, I actually mean fucking huge. One drawback to all of this though, you are pretty squishy. So, you know, it's a high risk, high reward gameplay for those of you who like, you know, that kind of deal. If you like the glass cannons, I think this is definitely going to be a very strong pick for you. And now next on our list, we have the Druid. And Druid is running Wind Shear, but it's actually kind of a bit of a chase between Wind Shear and Tornado. I mean, either way, they're throwing wind at people, but these two specs are extremely powerful. But we're going to be focusing on Wind Shear because this is currently the one that is performing the best and is more consistently seen on the leaderboards. And it is a hell of a build, honestly. Like, if you're looking for something that can sit back and beam things down as a true ranged class, then this is absolutely it. And, you know, actually hidden S tier bonus to this build, it's like it's a human Druid build. So if you own a Druid skin, you can see it. And that's great, dude. That's amazing. So it's, you know, it's S tier if you have a skin, but also S tier for everything else. And it's just a really clean play style. You can sit back and, especially on bosses, have your wolves tank them so you can just laser beam the enemies down. The damage is absolutely absurd. I can attest to this. I actually had Ace pretty much carrying me through tormented boss kills in like the first couple of days of the season. So this build is very accessible. You can get it up and running very, very quickly, which is a huge bonus. Because it's a basic skill build, and you'll see that this is a bit of a running theme with Firebolt being a basic skill, Wind Shear being a basic skill, you're able to use a lot of very, very powerful aspects. And one of the best sort of just general ones is Hectic, because it allows you to turn all of these basic skill attacks into cooldown reduction. So things like your Debilitating Roar, for example, have extraordinarily low cooldowns now, meaning you can almost keep a 100% uptime on it. Well, actually, depending on your gear, you can keep a 100% uptime on it, and it's a 70% damage reduction on the enemy. So this would make Druids like one of the best picks for a group setup because they just turn all of the damage off, which is, I mean, it's insane, right? So yeah, I mean, it's like with everything on this list, it's incredibly powerful throughout. It does not rely on like holy bolts to be fireball at all. So this is something that you can take kill Andariel, you can take it into the pit and not have to fish for enemies. And you can also do pretty much all of the speed farmy stuff in the game, no problem whatsoever. It's a really, really nice rounded build. But of course, if you are looking for it, there are Tornado builds that perform on an extremely close level. However, we're just going to be focused on the creme de la creme for this video. Following that, we have the Rogue. And now this really pains me to say, but at time of recording, Rogue is currently the highest tier cleared class in the game. We have a 133 with the Heartseeker build, which is what we're going to be covering today. Now, this is a basic skill build again, so a lot of powerful stuff in this build. Right away, you are going to know that it's going to have adaptability, Hectic, and Moonrise, which means it's going to hit like a goddamn choo-choo train and have practically no cooldowns. And because it's a rogue, as you'd expect, it has very, very high mobility. I'd argue this is probably one of the best speed farming builds out of the entire list. So even if you're not looking at pushing pit, then it's still going to be really, really, really powerful just for that thing alone. It is also a really good bosser as well, but it is worth noting that the damage does suffer a little on bosses that don't have ads. So like Tormented Andariel, for example, but it's not a slight. I mean, I'm not even sure why I'm mentioning it. I think I've got a bias against rogues, but they're more than capable of carrying those for like up to a 4-man group if you want to do that. And it would only be fair to also point out that rogues have what I would consider one of the best abilities to express your skill or to outplay a fight. Now, everybody can dodge boss mechanics, but not quite like a rogue can, where you can use your dashes, you can use your shadow step to move without moving, so to speak, which allows you to keep your inner calm buff up. And if you get that all right, it looks flashy as fuck. I'm not gonna lie. This is the actual kind of like, I hate admitting it, but it is really like one of the coolest looking classes when somebody is playing it well. So yeah, the class is looking really, really damn good this season. Now, I'm not gonna play it, but for those of you who are looking for something fast, flashy, has a ton of damage, and is actually surprisingly more tanky than you'd expect, because when they gutted damage reduction from like gear and stuff like that, Rogue ended up kind of like floating to the top in that regard, because they have a lot in their skill tree and stuff like that. With Dark Shroud and high levels of dodge, you're actually surprisingly tough with the Rogue. But all in all, fantastically rounded build for anyone who's looking for that fast, flashy kind of playstyle. And finally, saving, of course, the best till last, my favorite, the Barbarian. The best class in the game, or at least the best looking class in the game at the moment, I suppose. But, that aside, Barb is performing really, really well, with clears of up to tier 132 in the pit. And it's, again, a lot like the Druid, where there's two very competitive builds. There's Thorns that's sitting on rank 1, but then like 90% of what's in the top 10 is actually Bash. So I want to talk a little bit about Leapquake, but I want to focus more on Bash, because in my mind as well, this is the way better spec to play. But regardless of what you pick, you are going to be getting two things with these. Giga damage. Like, both of these builds do insane damage. They have to, right, to be able to do like a 132. But also, we have just the craziest amount of toughness in the game. We're not immortal like Firebolt, but that's what makes like just being able to stand in all the mechanics even crazier, is because we're not invulnerable to damage. We just take it, and then we just heal back up and we're fine, which, that's the end game for any Barb build. It's like, we want to just stand in front of the boss and hit it. If that's what you like doing, then Barb is definitely delivering this season once again. Now, a little bit more on why I would recommend Bash over Thorns. Now, Thorns is fantastic. It was popularized by Don't Hit Me this season with the Leapquake variation, does a ridiculous amount of damage. However, it's very inconsistent in how it delivers that damage, because if you find a boss that doesn't spawn ads, or if you have ads that don't hit particularly fast, the DPS just falls through the floor, which can be a really disappointing experience, because you've got that spec and perhaps not another one, right? You don't want to keep respecing, you don't have another Barb, which is a fair thing to like not have. Not everybody has all day every day to play the game, so I wouldn't want to recommend this as quote unquote the best build. But Bash is only one tier behind on the leaderboard, and it is far more consistent, because it doesn't rely on like holy bolts, it doesn't rely on ads, it just fucking slaps. Not only that, the barrier to entry on this one is particularly low as well. You don't need mental gear in order to get the ball rolling. As a matter of fact, you basically don't even need any uniques. They're nice to have, but you can play this build to a pretty high level without any whatsoever. But that being said, you also have an incredibly high ceiling when it comes to damage scaling, so the better that your gear gets, you will see a steady increase in how far you can push your build, which feels really, really nice. That's one thing that Barbs have always had, is really awesome gear scaling. And honestly, for me, and this might not be for everyone, but the main selling point is a lot of the time the builds are pretty straightforward. We really are just kind of smacking the boss, standing still and holding left click. And for me, that's peak ARPG. I don't care what anybody says. I just want to hold one button and blow what's in front of me to shit. Like, I don't care about having to press 1,000. I played WoW for like 15 years. I've had enough of that. My fingers hurt, dude. I just want to punch a big key on my keyboard that just says smash and see things blow up. And Bash definitely delivers on that. So really, really enjoying it myself. It's an excellent build. It's not just strong in the pit, but it's an excellent speed farmer. And I've been boosting Tormented Dorial since maybe like the 3rd or 4th day, with groups of up to 4 people, no problem whatsoever. So couldn't recommend it enough. A slight bias shining through at the end there, but what you gonna do? Barb main's gonna Barb main. And folks, there's the list. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget that all of the gameplay that you've seen has been provided by some of the best players for their respective classes. And I'll leave links to their channels or their profiles down in the description below so you can jump in, check out what their build guides are or anything like that. Give them a sub, give them a thank you for sharing the content and their time so that I was able to bring you this video. But that's all from me. Like and subscribe here if you enjoyed my content. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one. Love you. Bye.